So I'm going to start by introducing each of my colleagues, then I'll introduce my project. But just to say hello, I'm Dr. Jo Conlon and I'm from the University of Manchester, and it's my absolute pleasure to be part of this Back to Baselines project. And I think I'd just like to say that I think it's just been an amazing network to be part of. I just think it's just a wonderful talking point. You meet so many interesting people. So I hope everybody else has had the pleasurable afternoon and day and previous days that we've had. Over to Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul. There's only one Paul and Mersey. And I'm new to this business of fashion and textiles, so treat me with kid gloves, please. We've been undertaking some work in the Greater Manchester area looking at the quality and the composition of materials entering into the sorting sector. So this would be the sorting sector set up primarily to deal with end-of-life garments generally, so it would be clothing as opposed to wider household textiles.
Hi everyone, my name's Hilde Heim. I'm at the Manchester Metropolitan University, and what we've been doing is working on two projects. We've named them, first of all, LEGI-Standards I and LEGI-Standards II, and I can speak to both of those today because the one follows the other. And it kind of says it in the name. What we're doing is looking at the legislation that's coming out, not just in the EU, but globally. And we're mapping that through to the eco-standards. So we're sitting directly underneath thematic area 2 about eco-labels, eco-standards, and so on.
Thank you. And then just to say that my background is in manufacturing, first in the UK and then in global sourcing as my career went globally, and then I became an academic, and now my project is working with businesses in West Yorkshire, textile businesses, hoping to elevate them to be able to invest in digital technologies to be able to do sustainability better, but I think that they need to be more efficient to do so. So we're using lean manufacturing as a vehicle to help them become more efficient, to become digital ready and upskill, and then to deliver on sustainability. So that's my project. So I think what we need to talk about is one of the things that there's been a theme of today is like that so many amazing projects going on, but we need to establish a baseline. So the question is, what kind of baseline are you trying to establish and how's it going?
All right. Bottom line, we're trying to understand the nature of materials that are handled by sorters, what that means for downstream options in terms of reuse and recycling. So what it means for the wearable and the non-reusable or non-wearable fractions. So we've spent some time with a sorter in the northwest. Primarily deals with Greater Manchester end-of-life textiles called SWD. One of a number of sorters across the UK. They are owned by the TRI, which is a Textile Recycling International, who are the biggest sorting operation in the UK. So they own quite a number of sorting facilities. Going in there is a bit of an eye-opener for someone who's not actually been in a proper factory for a while. And it is staggering the amount of material that goes through this factory. So you've got a conveyor belt which basically goes for 12 hours a day and never stops and has material on it. So we've got an absolute avalanche of materials. And I think as I wrestle with this and think about the implications of the materials that we're identifying, I find myself with more questions than answers, which I suppose is what researchers are supposed to do, because it justifies the next round of research, doesn't it? So that's where my head is at the moment. So you may be able to help me with some of those questions. But in essence, we started because a fast fashion outlet came to Greater Manchester and said, "Can you help us establish new routes to ensure the diversion of textiles away from the residual waste bin?" I thought that's like a good thing, isn't it? And then you get to speak to the sector, and you suddenly go, "Oh, more textiles of poorer quality into the sorting sector might not be a good thing at all." So that got me wrestling with this whole question about, heck, why is it that the margins are so tight? Why is it that the sorting sector is largely moving offshore? Well, there's some bleeding obvious answers to that when you look at the value of some of these material streams. But the long and the short of it is these are manual sorting operations which only survive in the UK on the basis of the value extracted from the rewearable fraction that they're able to identify and separate from this stream. The non-wearable fraction makes a loss in the terminology of the sector. What it means is if you divide the amount of material coming through the factory by the costs of the sorting operation, and you get a per ton cost, then you are not recovering that amount on your non-reusable. So it's a loss-making element, but it's better than sending it to landfill, which will be costing you 160 quid a ton. So they do some separation of that, but because it's manual, they do the bare minimum. And one of the questions that we were wanting to answer was, if we were able to segregate into a narrower range of fractions, this non-reusable, would that create some opportunities in terms of increasing the value for downstream recycling possibilities, be they mechanical or indeed alternative, potentially chemical, yet to be developed at scale in the UK, as you know. So those were the questions we were wrestling with. Do you want some answers yet, or is that the next bit?
This is it later. Hilde, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've found a lot of questions as well. Well, first of all, I had my own small business as well for over 20 years. And that's why I tend to think about small-scale operations as well and what they might be going through. And what we did when we were speaking to various people, to various even larger businesses, they were all complaining about how confused they are. And this has been going on for several years now. It's the same rhetoric, how confused they are. They're not sure which legislations affect them. What does that have to do with them? Is it going to affect the UK? Is it not? Et cetera, et cetera. So we definitely saw a need very early on that, first of all, they don't even know what the legislation is. So I'll admit that there are already quite a few publications that do list that sort of thing and even group it. But a lot of it is still quite fractured and not global, and there are a few issues with it. So we took it upon ourselves, and with the help of my fabulous research assistant, Blanche here, who's done all the hard work of putting it in a boring old Excel spreadsheet to start off with, but at least now we have that. We thought that we would have about 46 pieces of legislation to list. We're now at about 90, I think, and we're looking at that globally as well. And I think that's the important thing here, because who knows where you are exporting to now, importing from now, or what will happen in the future. So at least we've got all that. It's out of those paywalls, as I've heard today. A lot of people have data behind those. And then we've got a baseline to start working with.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So in terms of our project, I'd just like to give a shout out to my research assistant, Garda, who's in the audience too. So we started with an ambition to help support Yorkshire businesses get investment in digital. And then as we quickly went round these businesses, we realised that was problematic because there was a big gap. And what they were mainly wanting to do was to become more efficient. So we use Lean as a vehicle to try to eliminate waste from the system so that they would be able to show some investments and then reinvest in perhaps digital technologies and upskilling of people. And so the baseline that we're trying to work towards is to agree what kind of operational efficiency measure we could use. So that might be OEE or operational asset productivity of units, so that we can establish across all of these businesses where there is waste in a system. And then we've also been looking at digital readiness, but lots of these businesses are, so that there's a real mix of digital readiness. There's some businesses who have got sensors and cameras and are collecting data, but then there's an issue of what to do with that data. And then equally, some businesses are still industry 3, so there's still a lot of paper and there's still a lot of, even if it's got a computer on the actual piece of equipment, it's not being used. So there's like varying degrees of digital readiness. But the wonderful thing that we've seen is that there is this real willingness to work together, to share common problems and to work together and just be quite open about what those problems are. So even if some of these businesses are kind of competitors or aligned in similar markets, the brilliant thing to report is that people are really willing to work together. So that's kind of the things that we're doing, because I think if we're going to tackle issues like reshoring of UK textiles and UK skills, then we have to work together. And I'm really pleased that industry seems to be very willing to do that, certainly as far as we've got. I hope you've got that far as well, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then in our sort of pre-discussions, we talked about what might be like some low-hanging fruit or some ways of building momentum. Is there anything that you think that would really help get us to the next stage? So we've alluded to asking more research questions and the next round of funding, but what could we capture at this stage that would show that there was the opportunity to really deliver for UK textiles?
Well, I've got some worrying results, I think, for the sector. So first question was, what if more material is diverted into the sorting sector from the waste bin? Yeah. Now, there's two ways of doing that. There's a really unpleasant way, which is you piggyback on Greater Manchester's waste survey, and you have a pile of textiles in the corner that some poor soul has separated out of the waste bin with everything else that's in there. So you get the idea, and then you go through that. Now, sadly, he says, slightly mixed blessings there. That survey has been delayed in Greater Manchester, so we weren't able to do that. Now, I say sadly with slight relief, because I now know how much handling is involved in using NIR technology, basically manual technology as opposed to conveyor belt technology, to do this identification and handling individual pieces of clothing. What have been in the residual waste bin would not have been a pleasant job. Yeah. So what we did was we undertook with Salford City Council a curbside recycling pilot, where we asked people to put into a bag that which they would otherwise have put in the bin, and we were quite at pains to tell people, please don't change your behaviour, don't put stuff in here that you would take to the charity shop or you'd take down to John Lewis or wherever you're going to get your take back benefits, and we collected some from there. Now we've got quite a lot of learning about how to do that better in the future. We've got a relatively small sample, but nevertheless a viable sample from that to look at. And that revealed that the proportion of non-wearable textiles was of the order of about 40%. And that compares with our other sample, which is that from bring banks situated at household waste recycling centres, where that proportion was near a quarter. Yeah. So you've got a substantial hike up potentially, we can only say potentially because of the sample size, in the proportion of non-wearables if we are successful in diverting more textiles away from residual waste, which clearly is one of the things that, with my environmental management hat on, I would be seeking to do. But that then brings with it a real headache to a sector that is already suffering from the erosion of rewearable markets globally. So it's getting pinched from both ends, if you like. So that was the headline finding there, was that our survey bears out the concerns that greater diversion will reduce the average quality going into sorting operations.
Do you want to just talk about value of recycled material?
Yeah. So one of the things we then did was, so what happens, this stuff comes into the factory, it goes through professional sorting operations, so you're confident that it's been sorted properly to end markets that we know exist, because this is a factory that commercially sorts to markets primarily in Africa and in Pakistan. And then you've got this non-reusable fraction. We adopted the same approach as the European study that Fashion for Good undertook about 3 years ago, called Sorting for Circularity. And we combined what is the black fraction, which is a definitely non-reusable textiles, with grey fraction, which is the lower quality. Currently, they've just about got a reuse market, but chances are it'll be the one that will go first. As there are greater pressures on the reuse market from alternative sources of product from across the world. So that grey fraction and the black fraction combined, we scanned and we found that compared to the European study, we have a much lower fraction of pure cotton. And pure cotton is arguably one of the higher value materials for two reasons. One, there are existing chemical recycling routes for cotton, complex though some of them may be. But two is that that's the obvious candidate for a wiper, and the wipers, particularly white T-shirt absorbent materials, generate the most significant value from that non-reusable fraction. And indeed, if my reading of the literature is right, probably about twice the value that you might get should there be some point down the line a viable chemical recycling process available in the UK at scale. So quite interesting there. So that means that we've got a much higher proportion of polycottons. And again, I'm struggling when I look at the literature to understand what fraction of that polycotton is amenable to chemical recycling, because I'm hearing different things. Certain studies suggest that polycottons can be recycled. Others say that no, only they have to be polyester-rich polycottons to be amenable to one technology. And then there's suggestions that cotton-rich polycottons might be amenable to recycling. So there's a lot of confusion in my mind. Steve, I think you pointed to confusion in that space. I appreciate some of this is commercially sensitive, but it's not helping me. So any help on that front would be really useful. But yeah, so why is the situation in the UK different to what the European survey found 3 years ago? Well, I think there are two possible explanations, and I don't have a definitive answer. One is that we in the UK are more addicted to fast fashion than our European cousins, and therefore the quality of materials coming into sorting is poorer, less cotton. The other is that there's been a change over the last 3 years, and this was pointed out to me by a colleague of mine who looks at the product market, saying if your price point is really critical, and you've got to keep the price of goods at the same level, and the cost of materials is going up, then the only way to do that is to put in poorer quality materials. Yeah. So maybe that is why there's a shift from pure cotton to polycottons that we may be seeing going on. So there's two things again, and all of this makes the headache for the sorters greater. Yeah. So if you've got a poorer quality of garment coming in, chances are it will meet the quality thresholds for reusable. So there may be a general trend towards a greater fraction of non-wearable, in addition to all the other things I've mentioned. So yeah, unfortunately, I think that's probably a treble whammy of bad news.
Right, we'll go to Hilde for some good news. So have you got any good news, or have you got anything in legislation in your that might help with that yet?
So I was just going to say, from the practical to the perhaps more theoretical, actually, because that is very practical. And yes, I have been in some of those plants, and they are eye-openers, definitely worth a visit. So that way you understand, yeah. As far as the legislation is concerned, we're quite happy that we've done our list and that we can share that now. But we took that one step further, and that is we went and had a look at the eco-standards, at the standards in general, not just the eco-standards, not just the environmental ones, but also the social, the governance ones, and so on. And what we did next, that was still in LEGI-STANDARDS I, was to map them through. So that, let's say a firm finds out that they are subject, if you like, to a law, they can go and find an eco-standard or a standard that they can use, if you like, to demonstrate their compliance to a particular law. So we've done that mapping for them. And this, all of this database, this knowledge base, is going to be available when we finish it up, wrap it up, on our website, on our knowledge exchange website called Fast Tracks, so that anybody can go in, click on it, and find the list and the mapping through different tabs and so on. So that's the I suppose, the back to baselines, the data part of the project. But in doing so, we found that there are a lot of laws that match through in a lot of different ways. We're about to actually map them visually, and we're a little bit worried this is going to look like a big mess. Lots of things going back and forth, and have we made it any simpler for people or not? I don't know. Nonetheless, we're going to do that to start off with, just to demonstrate, yes, this is really difficult to deal with, to understand, but then we're going to take it a little bit further as well. And then I might ask you as well, Jo, about the digital readiness, because that's the next thing that we're going to suggest. We've certainly been looking at a lot of the digital solutions out there that might help with that compliance right at the beginning. And we wonder just to what extent you found that people are actually ready, because I would say we've kind of found a 50-50 feel, like there is digital hesitancy. We've talked about before. They are digitally uncomfortable now. I don't think it's so much hesitancy as uncomfortable now, discomfort. But we're moving in the right direction for sure. And yes, we're also seeing people wanting to work together. Fashion firms are ultimately very practical and want to find solutions for everything, for every problem they've got, whether it be plain old sales or any of these, legislation compliance things or whatever. So I think there is definitely this appetite to look for solutions. They are not out there yet, but we can talk about that in a minute. So, yeah,
I think we found that there was definitely an appetite for digital solutions, and people were perhaps further ahead than they thought. What they needed was that, like we've discussed today, lots of the information is out, or people don't even know what they don't know, or they haven't got capacity to go through that. So I think what is needed is for industry and academics to work together to share that press, because people are just saying everything that we go to try and find out, we're having to outsource. We haven't got capacity to try and outsource that. So I think there is definitely an overlap. And then I thought there was an overlap with you as well about wool recycling, because having visited Prato, wool and cashmere recycling is really valuable. So I was wondering again if there was or is your hat purely in cotton?
No. My hat's in anything. So the fact of the matter is that with our sample there was no pure wool at all, and that's 180 kilograms of just material that we scanned. Now there was some wool blends, so about 4% wool blends, and I'm not sure if that's amenable to some of the technologies we're talking about, where you're talking mechanical recovery of wool fibres, and in the case of the company whose name I can never pronounce, lots of eyes in all.
Oh yeah,
I understand that they put quite a lot of virgin in to ensure that they get
absolutely
product quality, but they do use recovered wool fibre. I'm not sure how tolerant they are of that.
I've just got the visual check of Maddie moving towards us, which is
it's Maddie going. She's got a big hook.
Yes, I'm just to ask anybody if they've got any questions or insights or perhaps information that we're searching for. But have
gratefully received.
Yeah, I'll have gratefully received. Anybody got a question? Steve?
I'll just mention one. Obviously, I'm from Yorkshire, so I've spent quite a bit of time in various recycling establishments. It's mainly mechanical. And I think the biggest thing I hear every time I go in, the biggest thing in here is we need new markets for the waste that we've got. So that more precisely, what are we sorting for? There's got to be a market for those micro sorts effectively to go into to make that whole process worthwhile. So the other side of this is innovating in terms of new product that will have waste content within them. And that's got to be not just clothing, because the vast majority of textile recyclate at the moment that goes into new product goes nowhere near clothing. It's in your cars, it's under your carpet, it's in your it's insulation materials, it's in your mattresses. These products might last 4 or 5 times longer than the original item of clothing. It's those marketplaces, I think, that we've also got to help identify.
My speaking with a few recyclers, one of which I'm sure will be the same person you spoke to, Steve, and it was John Clay, who said 2 things. One, some traditional markets, mattress filling, they've struggled to maintain because of questions over consistency of product, and that could point to more sophisticated sorting, more sophisticated feedstock for them, slightly more consistent product, that might allow them to recapture some of the market that they've lost. But then the other point that he was making was of that question of new product, and one of the interesting things that I think we need to explore in this space, just because of the sheer volumes, are technologies that could potentially take larger volumes. So a compression and encapsulation approach might create new products, building products, etc., and deal with a lot of material. Now, we don't have them in the UK at the moment. Our current mechanical technologies at any sort of scale are all teasing apart, putting air in, creating things that have insulating value. So I think that's one of the questions for me. Where is this extra value? So where are the products that will maintain or ideally enhance the price that sorters can get for this material? Even within all of that, I still think there's got to be it's not going to work financially without some sort of other intervention as well, but that will at least help some of the economics.
Choice. Big point on that. Powder injection molding technology has been looked at for decades, and there's a big question about the legacy of that way, or what happens to that at the end of its life.
Yeah, of course.
As we see at the end of life of textiles in various places already, and it starts we're just sort of punting problem.
Yeah, we've done.
A couple of decades down.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because if you put it back in, I'm concerned with a slight fixation about closed loop, and you end up. Well, if I'm really good and I put all this effort, so I break it all the way down and then build it all the way up. That's a hell of a lot of effort.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of environmental effort, and then you produce something or produce a raw material that goes into a product which is waste within months. You think, bloody hell, it's back. I thought I'd just sorted you out, and it's and I think that those are the questions that are really tough. I think. Yeah.
In Nottingham, we do actually have textile waste doorstep collection, so in situ up to you. And I just wondered whether, going back to your problem about separating up textile waste, whether you've actually researched how many local authorities do have that. So it sounds like can't support otherwise. So, kind of there's possibly a good thing, but actually the reality is that everything we're probably doing.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, the pilot. Look, sorry.
No, I was just going to pick up on that question. So, sorry, plug for RAP here. We collect data for DEFRA, and all the councils reporting to us what they collect, how they collect it. So we know who collects textiles from a council source. But what we're finding is councils are giving up responsibility for that and going into partnership with charities or others. So I think it is a evolving world. And there was some debate very early on that textiles were going to be part of something called simpler recycling. So this is where the government is mandating councils collect all different range of materials, and textiles kind of was on the list in the early days, but it fell off. So I think that whole collection piece and the role of councils. But I had another question related to that is whether the perception of who is collecting it means you decide what you put in the bag. So it was one of the questions I was going to ask you is how you did that, because what you might give to the council who's making money out of my clothes versus
a charity that might be collecting is quite different. So
Yeah, I think that's the way to get that extra bit though, isn't it? But interestingly, what prompted me to think about it is having travelled past a charity shop early one morning last week to find a mountain of red collectible bags on their doorstep. So I can only assume that they were put out for their rubbish rather than being that to the charity shop.
Yeah.
it depends. So yeah, my question was, in your collections that you said you could have done differently / improved, how did you go about that? About giving trust in people? What did you tell them to do? All of those learnings. Is this going to be part of what?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, in essence, we were asking people not to change their behaviour. So, and of course, but you still give them something easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult one. But and also the last thing that as soon as we went doorstep of Greater Manchester Combined Authority, go, oof, doorstep, bloody expensive. Yeah. So I think the feeling is among the local authorities I've spoken to is that they wine bottles in my case, possibly too many each week. You know, there's just the general churn of life. Yeah, textiles aren't like that. They're sort of nothing at all for a while, and then oh shit, there's a great pile. Yeah, and so I think the feeling is that the collection of those, if there is to be a local authority-driven collection, has to be slightly different to that, and it has to be lower cost because of all the challenges that go with that. So if that is the case, then you will get a different thing. As to the behaviour of charities, there's a lot of questions being asked around how good the local shop is at deciding what it hangs on to and what it doesn't. I think some are very good, they know the market, some are less so. But a lot of the stuff that comes into SWD is coming from charities. SWD are paying charities, not very much, but are paying them for that feedstock because they can, on the basis that they can increase its value when they've sorted it from what they pay for it. But some of it goes back to charity shops, which is like slightly crazy, isn't it? So you've got a really interesting dynamic there, and it's very difficult to then track stuff. So is it going round in circles? And you know, sorry. You can see I'm not interested in the sector, haven't I? I'm a convert.
Yeah. Welcome to Textile.
Yeah.
So if everybody wants to just have a catch up later on any of these questions, thank you for your attention. We're just going to hand over to the next panel, and we're sorry, Mandy.
Sorry, Mandy. She was out of my field. Conveniently, that's my excuse. Thanks, Joe. Sorry.
Good job.